time, and there's a lot of conflict between people away from the cave. Scary stories around the cave, less than humans.
Scotland, home to multiple tenebrous and scary stories that haunt your dreams. However, there is one that surpasses them all, a story that is important to the Ayrshire coast and its people. A story that kept people far away from the caves in the 16th century. That is the legend of Sonny Bean and his clan of cannibals. Alexander Bean, famously known as Sonny Bean, was born and raised by farmers in the outskirts of Edinburgh. At a young age, Sonny Bean and his wife decided to move out together to the other side of Scotland, in a cave situated in the south of Girvan, Ayrshire, also named Benane Cave, from which it stretched to a mile while entering from the seaside. This instant change in his life was due to the fact he was known to be a criminal and was hiding from those accusations back in his own city. They would hunt down travellers or people just walking by, and they would kidnap them into their home, to later on eat them. Himself and his wife didn't want to get caught when stealing from his victims, so murdering them and using their bodies for food was the best option they had.
I've been inside the Sonny Bean cave, and the second you enter, it sends a chill down your spine, knowing everything that's gone on inside there.
As the years passed by, his family was soon to be incestuous, having children and grandchildren all over the cave, resulting in 48 lives to take care of and bellies to feed. These events continued for around 25 years. Many of the body parts were found in the sea, and people from around Ayrshire thought it was another one of those mythical creatures. But one night, when a man and his wife were returning from a fair, the Bean family captured the wife and failed to get the man, as he was extremely skilled in combat. The man escaped on his horse and told the authorities about the disaster and about the Sonny Bean family. 400 men and authorities were sent to the cave by the king to bring back the family. When authorities arrived at the cave and caught the Sonny Bean family, they were petrified by the amount of dead bodies that were piled up in the cave. After capturing them, the 27 men in the Bean family were butchered while the women of the family watched. After, all the women were then burned to death. It is complicated to enter the Benane Cave as the high tide blocks the entrance, but for Sonny Bean and his family, this was beneficial as it blocked the entrance from the rest of the people that lived in the coast.
The first time I tried to get inside the cave, it was still high tide, and I had to wait a few hours before I could actually get in. And even when the tide went down, it was still difficult to locate the small little entrance it had to offer.
They had another hidden entrance on the other side of the cave, in which they smuggled and kidnapped their victims. And to give me more information about the cave and its history, I got in contact with Billy Young.
Legends like this, and there are other examples around the country, was put about was because quite often caves were used to hide smuggled contraband, and if locals put about stories that there were suspicious goings on in these caves and scary stories around the caves, then people would stay away and not go into the caves and find all the smuggled contraband. And there are many examples of these, some at Killeen Castle, just a little bit up the coast from Benane Head, where there are two very large caves below the castle there, and we know for certain they were used for hiding smuggled goods coming over from the continent, like spirits and silks and spices. Yeah, the other good point about the caves, where Sonny Bean's family and the other caves I mentioned were good places, well, that they were very tidal, and what that meant is that if the tide came in, they were impossible to get to, short of using a boat. So it was very difficult for people like customs men and police, etc., to actually find and access the caves. So that's why they were great places for the sort of criminal underworld to use.
Now, did Sonny Bean really live in the coastal area of Benane Head? Or is this just one of those made-up stories in order to scare people?
Talk about the Treaty of Union from 1707, that's when the nobles of both countries agreed a deal for the two countries to unite as a political state. But it was very much a deal between nobles, many of whom were bribed by the political class of the day to agree to it. And at the time, certainly in Scotland, the general population were not happy about it, but as they didn't have the franchise to vote, they had no say at all at the time. And that was reflected in what we saw later, as I mentioned, about the smuggling and how people didn't really regard it as doing anything wrong. People regarded smuggling as almost like doing their duty to overcome taxes imposed after the union with England.
This story appeared for the first time on a Newgate Calendar article from the 18th century, in which it describes the events the Sonnybean family had on the failed night that ended their criminal encounters. However, no official records, letters or journals state that this could have been a true story. Many publications from England show that this could have been a form of propaganda. As Bailey said, Scotland and England were having conflict, and this could have been a way of portraying Scottish people as evil criminals. Yet Scotland found a way to turn it around and use it as a touristic ride. The Edinburgh Dungeons is an underground touristic ride located in the city centre. In the ride, you can adventure yourself in the Sonnybean Cave or witch hunt, and many more stories from around the country. Scotland shows a strong connection to the story and its use for tourism and attractions. Other ways that show that this myth is also known worldwide is the use of this story in media films, such as The Hills Have Eyes by Wes Craven. In the film, we get to see a very large family living in underground layers. They kidnap an American family while they're on vacation and start to eat them. It is clear to see that there is some inspiration from the tale.
It just shines a light on a couple of aspects of Scottish history which are really interesting, which is both the relationship with England after the Union and the relationship with smuggling and smugglers and how they used to use places like caves, because this is particularly relevant to the study of travel, because people don't realise that it's only in the last 200 to 300 years that really roads have been the main system of transport. Previous to that, the sea was the quickest way to get about, and most people travelled by water. And it was the easiest and quickest and fastest way to travel, so that's why caves also were very popular places.
While some historians believe this was true, others believed it was a scare tale for people around the coastal area of Girvan as they hid smuggled contraband, or as a form of manipulation from England in order to portray Scottish people as evil monsters. But it will always remain a mystery. We will never know for certain, but we will continue to use this story as a form of inspiration for media, inspiration for horror-themed attractions, and as a scary story to tell children during the night.